Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are stepping away from all the loud, speculative market hype you see in the headlines, and we're diving into the incredibly serious, frankly, fascinating business of structural wealth preservation. If you're a fiduciary, an estate planner, or a professional heavily focused on intergenerational stewardship, well, this explainer is built exactly for you. We're going to fundamentally rethink how we build resilience.
Here is our roadmap for today. We'll be covering repricing trust, evidentiary fragmentation, evidence architecture, hidden liquidity, codified arbitration, and finally, we'll wrap up with the quiet power doctrine. Let's jump right in.
Section 1. Repricing trust under pressure.
Over the past year or so, we've seen absolutely wild momentum in precious metals. I mean, it's been everywhere. But beneath the surface, modern markets are actively sorting assets into two very distinct camps. On one side, you have speculative exposure, chasing short-term momentum and aggressive positioning. On the other side, you have durable reserve architecture. True wealth preservation isn't about speculation at all. It's about disciplined acquisition and long-term holding strategies that actively maintain liquidity and fiercely protect evidentiary integrity.
And this brings us to a really fundamental realization. When you look at the markets right now, we aren't just looking at knee-jerk reactions to inflation or debt. What we are actually witnessing is a global repricing of trust, liquidity, and continuity. The absolute deepest pressure on our financial systems today isn't just about money. It's a fundamental crisis of trust.
Which leads us to Section 2, the evidentiary fragmentation crisis. We call this overarching problem evidentiary fragmentation. Modern economies rely so heavily on delegated trust, right? But that underlying trust is visibly fracturing across custody, arbitration, and basic ownership records. It's like a giant puzzle slowly coming apart. Without fiduciary-grade documentation and clear, lawful commercial verification, our modern institutional infrastructure literally begins to crack under stress.
Think about it like this. A permanently stored falsehood remains false. Just locking a bad, unverified document in a fancy digital vault doesn't magically make it legitimate. This is a foundational, non-negotiable rule of wealth preservation. Verification must absolutely always precede preservation. Without a verified chain of custody, preservation is just digitizing fragility.
Let's look at the solution in Section 3, blockchain as evidence architecture. So most people hear the word blockchain and they immediately think of highly volatile financial speculation. Actually, scratch that. They think of pure short-duration hype. But its true superpower, the real game changer, is acting as evidence architecture. Digital verification frameworks like the JusticeFund Exchange, RSI, and Notary Chain aren't about trading crypto at all. They're specifically designed to anchor immutable chain of custody, time-stamped continuity, and incredibly durable evidentiary memory for hard, physical assets.
The absolute strongest continuity systems out there do something brilliant. They merge the physical and the digital. By integrating rigorous physical verification with robust institutional frameworks like CCG and AFINet, you create an entirely unbroken chain of custody. This is exactly where notarial verification seamlessly meets blockchain anchoring. And for professionals, this provides the ultimate, undeniable proof of authenticity that is strictly required for robust estate planning, high-level insurance, and secured lending. Let's transition to the physical assets themselves in Section 4, the hidden liquidity hierarchy.
Buying precious metals isn't just about hoarding as much as you can. It's about constructing a highly specific, strategic architecture. Every piece has a job. Silver Eagles, for example, provide top-tier immediate retail recognition and trust. Generic bullion? That's there to maximize your total ounces. Large bars give you that heavy institutional density and scale. And fractional pieces, like gold backs, well, they inject absolutely essential divisible liquidity right at the base of your portfolio. Now, you might be wondering, why is that divisibility so absolutely crucial? Because reserve systems rarely fail from immediate scarcity, they fail from rigidity. When structural pressure hits, mobility and adaptability are what actually save a portfolio. Having layers that allow for transactional flexibility, that's the true bedrock of long-term portfolio resilience.
Let's elevate this concept in Section 5, Numismatics as codified arbitration.
A lot of people still view coin grading as just a subjective niche hobby. Let's completely dismantle that idea right now. Modern third-party grading by top-tier institutions like PCGS, NGC, and CAC, especially utilizing the incredibly precise Sheldon Scale, is what we call codified arbitration. These entities establish ironclad market credibility. Their statements on composition, authentication, grading, and valuation don't just sit on a shelf. They create a complete, totally undeniable evidentiary record.
Consider what we call the Carson City effect. The Carson City Mint only operated for a very brief historical period, producing just a tiny fraction of the coins that other mints did. Yet today, its coinage represents the absolute pinnacle of intrinsic value commerce and Western settlement realities. When modern institutional trust wanes, as we are seeing today, these finite, tangible artifacts skyrocket in importance. Why? Because they are decentralized, undeniably real proofs of sovereign production and historical value.
This requires a massive paradigm shift in how we think. When properly authenticated and graded, these items are not merely collectibles, they are continuity artifacts. For a compliance-oriented investor or a fiduciary, they represent preserved historical legitimacy. They represent sovereign continuity that can be lawfully, seamlessly passed down through multiple generations.
Bringing it all together now in Section 6, the Quiet Power Doctrine.
This is where the entire architecture unifies into one cohesive system. Precious metals bring the long-duration stability. Numismatic grading establishes verified historical trust. Blockchain anchoring frameworks like Notary Chain and the JusticeFund Exchange provide the necessary evidentiary preservation. Distributed custody gives you operational resilience. And finally, fiduciary-grade documentation guarantees lawful preservation. This is the blueprint. Modern markets are aggressively rewarding this deeply structured wealth preservation over any kind of short-term speculation.
Notice a pattern here? During times of extreme market volatility, the most resilient systems are literally never the loudest ones. They don't panic. They rely on deep composure. The absolute strongest systems are highly organized, incredibly well-documented, highly liquid, adaptable, and most importantly, they are structurally calm. They consistently favor disciplined stewardship, transparency, and strict verification over hype and blind assumption.
And this brings us to the ultimate core takeaway of our explainer today. The future belongs to systems that are capable of organizing extreme complexity into operational clarity. The deepest form of resilience isn't trying to magically predict the future. You can't. It is building a robust system of organized continuity. So I want to leave you with this highly provocative question to challenge your own fiduciary stewardship and planning. Is your reserve system currently built on speculative acceleration, just crossing your fingers and hoping the market goes up? Or is it built on verified, transparent, heavily documented, and organized continuity? Remember, resilient wealth is built through disciplined stewardship, not hype. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Now it's time to start verifying your continuity today.